Hello everyone, Steve here again with another video about statistics and math in baseball sims. Today's topic is about assigning defense ratings in baseball sims. It's a complicated topic, sometimes controversial actually, and there's a lot of different metrics that people try to use to accomplish this. As you can see, some of them in the middle of this page. There's also a lot of articles that have been written. I show a link at the bottom of the page here, but I'm not sure there's really a consensus about how you go about rating defense. So with that as an introduction, I am going to move on and talk about some considerations in rating defense. I think the most important question, or the first question is, what are we trying to measure? I think it depends on the sim. Some sims, I think, try to put the overall defensive ability all into one rating. Arguably, the Stratomatic basic defensive rating did that. Some try to split it up between the person's range and the rate at which they make an error. And I think Stratomatic Advanced and Super Advanced are examples of that type of rating system. There's a few other games, like I'm thinking of Status Pro, or at least the early versions of Status Pro, where the error rate was the primary defensive rating, and then they had something called a clutch defense rating. And so, if in certain situations, the defensive player might be able to have a better chance of turning a double play, for example, or just getting an out instead of, say, a hit. So it can vary from sim to sim, but I think it's important when you're trying to determine what a person's rating should be, you first know what the sim is trying to accomplish. Another example is a Sports Illustrated baseball game from the early 70s. It basically, as best I can tell, did not assign ratings based on fielding percentage. And in fact, due to the game design, it was actually more of a clutch defense rating than anything, where it would turn certain rolls by the pitcher into outs. I think another important consideration, I talk about this a lot in my different videos, is there's a lot of people concerned about absolute accuracy in assigning ratings of all kinds, including defense. I think probably equally important, especially in defense, is that they be accurate on a relative basis. A good shortstop should be rated higher than a mediocre shortstop, and that should be rated higher than a bad shortstop. And I think if a game gets it right on a relative basis, that's probably a win. So getting into the actual assignment of ratings, I think different game producers take a different approach. Some of them, I think, are more data-oriented, and some of them, I think, focus more on reputation. And I would say some of them probably combine the two. There's been an evolution over time about the availability and quality and reliability of defensive metrics. We've always captured, I think, putouts, assists, and errors. And of course, that results in fielding percentage. But there's a lot more modern data available. They can track batted balls, down to the nearest inch practically, and they can track where the fielder was when the ball was hit. And so they have a better idea of a fielder's range, etc. An interesting question, which we'll talk about here in a few slides, is how consistent is a player's defensive performance from year to year? I just rated a team, the 1986 Red Sox, and Dwight Evans is their right fielder. And in many years, the statistics would say he was a superb right fielder. In the year 1986 that I rated, using statistics only, I rated him I would say above average. And I did have somebody ask, the question why he wasn't rated higher, and maybe he should have been. I think in that year, Stratomatic had him rated a 1, which is rare and the best you can get. So that's an interesting question. And then the Gold Glove Award. I ask a somewhat rhetorical question about whether the Gold Glove Award is objective. I think the answer is no. It probably is somewhat based on reputation. It's people's opinion, which is fine. The more important question is, should it be a factor in assigning defense ratings? I can say for the old Sports Illustrated game, it was pretty clear to me that if somebody got a Gold Glove, they got a bonus in their defense rating, right or wrong. So again, lot to think about. Hey, before I go on, I just want to mention, it's kind of important to me that people make comments to these videos. I don't care as much about liking and subscribing. This is just a hobby, but I think for purposes of discussion and the betterment of our hobby, the more comments and discussion we can have, the better. So if you have something interesting to say, make a comment. With that, I'm going to talk about some specific statistics. And as you might have guessed, I'm going to talk about Derek Jeter. And I'm really not trying to generate any controversy here, although I know there is a difference of opinion on Derek Jeter, particularly about his fielding. And so I'm just going to present some data, and then I'll make a conclusion at the end. So traditionally, we always looked at fielding percentage, which is errors divided by total chances. And, that has its merit. It has its weaknesses, but it has its merit. So the way these graphs that I'm going to show you are set up is on the right-hand scale, I have the strat rating, which generally goes from 1 to 4. Sometimes a really bad defensive player can have a 5. But in any case, you can see here in the green line, Derek Jeter's Stratomatic defense rating year by year, starting in 1995 when he didn't play much. He was a 4. And then he worked his way up a couple times to a 1. And then near the end of his career, he migrated back down to 4. I've also captioned the 5 different seasons where he got Gold Gloves, which I think is 2004 to 2006, and 2009 and 2010. So I've got one little typo here at the bottom in the legend, but I'll explain in a second. So in the blue bars, what we have is Derek Jeter's fielding percent year by year. And, it varies a lot year to year. Pretty low in 2000 and 2013, but pretty high in 2009 and 10 when he won the Gold Glove, and pretty high in 1998 when he achieved a 1 rating from Stratomatic. The yellow or the orange bar is supposed to be the league average fielding percentage, so ignore the legend. And you can see that in most years, not all years, but in most years, Derek Jeter's fielding percentage was above the league average, which is good. So, I find it interesting just to look at this data and see how it correlates both to the strat rating as well as when he earned a Gold Glove or didn't. Okay, on to the next chart. This attempts to look at range, and as I understand it, and I use baseball reference data, as I understand it, they calculate a range factor, which I think is just total chances, and then they adjust it on a per 9 inning basis, which I think is the right way to do it. And so this chart shows in the blue bar, it's Derek Jeter's range factor per 9 innings. and the league average is the orange bar of range factor per 9 innings, and this is all for shortstops. One caveat, I guess I would say, about this range factor is that it can be influenced by, whether you're playing behind a pitcher that throws a lot of strikeouts or not, because you're not going to get as many chances if there's a strikeout pitcher. And I think it depends as well as whether you're behind a ground ball pitcher or a fly ball pitcher. In any case, what you can see here is in almost every year, but maybe one in 2005, Derek Jeter's range factor per 9 innings was below the league average for that time period. And again, hard to say what to make of this, but it would seem as a general statement that he didn't get to as many balls as maybe other people did. But as we saw in the other chart, when he did get to the ball, he was able to field it and turn it into an out. So pretty interesting. So Baseball Reference has another set of statistics, and the one statistic is called RTOT, and one is called RDRS. And as I understand it, the idea of both of these statistics is to convert or assess a combination of defensive factors, which would include range and fielding percentage, and probably some others. The defensive runs saved is only available for more recent years, but the RTOT apparently was calculated for all years that we're looking at here. And in general, a positive RTOT is good or desirable, we'll put it that way, and a negative RTOT is less than desirable. Interestingly, I only see 2 years where the RTOT for Jeter is above 0. 1 year in 2004, it was around 5, and that's the year he won his first Gold Glove, and 5 is okay. But when I look at this, I have a bit of a dilemma because I tend to use RTOT when I'm assigning defensive ratings in my sims. If the sim splits it up, the rating, I'll use fielding percentage for the pure error rating, and I'll use RTOT for the clutch rating. But if it's all one combined rating, or if it's not really a rating that's intended to replicate errors and fielding percentages, then I'll use the RTOT statistic. So the question would be, what do I do here if I'm rating Derek Jeter? He has 5 Gold Gloves, which sometimes you give a bonus for that. In 4 of these years, he had a 1 strat rating, which you can interpret that as best in the league. And some other years he had 2s, and then a few years he had 3s and 4s. So it's really a dilemma, and I'm not sure if I was rating Derek Jeter in any given year what I would do in assigning a rating. I may apply some judgment and kind of blend what I know from Strat as well as the statistics and go from there. If I was just going to compare Derek Jeter here to, say, Ozzie Smith in the 80s, he was winning Gold Gloves every year. His RTOT statistic was a positive, I would say 15 to 20 every year. So quite a bit of different story here than what you see for Jeter. Again, no criticism of Jeter, exciting player. Even though I didn't really like the Yankees, I would want him on my team for sure. And, all due respect to Derek Jeter. Again, any thoughts you have on how you rate players when you're doing your own ratings for Sims would be interesting to know. And with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thanks for listening.